Hello and welcome to Pens, Paint and Whiskers. So today I'm going to try actually painting more with these Pebeo Studio Gouache. In my last video I picked these up. I did explain I had replaced my Himi gouache, which I had for about 5 years. Got a lot of use out of it and enjoyed using it and realized that I like gouache and I want to stay using gouache. So I wanted to not replace my Himi Jelly Cup gouache with more of the same. I wanted to move up slightly in the ladder, so to speak, but with reasonable student grade art supplies too. So I came across these Pebeo gouaches, the little 20 milliliter tubes, and I bought some. So today we're going to paint them. This is in my last video. I was testing these out and they come out very, very bright, very, very vibrant, very nice. Though I did find directly out of the tube, probably the same with all gouache, but yeah, so they are a little bit patchy until, of course, you add water, and then you can sort of it gets more and more translucent with the more water you add, because of course, like watercolor, they are water soluble. That is the difference. There's two types of gouache. There's acrylic gouache and there's the ordinary. I'm using the ordinary. I have not tried the acrylic gouache yet, but I'm really happy with how some of these colours came out. Really surprised by how vibrant that yellow is. That is beautiful. And the magenta, then there was an orangey red. Now that, I'm not too delighted with how that looks, but it's not a colour I really gravitate towards very much. But it is a little bit pale and washed out. So yeah, that's a little bit kind of my least favourite colour and my least favourite sort of result of it. And the purple, blue, green, a nice gold, and the brown is quite nice. And then of course I never really use black, but it's nice to see how it turns out looking. So today I'm going to actually try and attempt to paint. So I've got some of them out in a little dish and I'll see how I go with them. What I'm painting here is My Little Pony fan art. I know, I'm a big fan of them, or at least the 80s ones anyway. I don't know much about the modern ones, whether they've changed or not too much, but I know the design has changed. I prefer the 80s designs, and I certainly prefer the 80s colours, so I was hoping to do some fan art of that. So I thought, why not kind of add them in? Why not do the 80s style My Little Pony fan art and do it in Pebeo gouache and see how we go. So I have them all, the paints, out on a little dish. So I've picked Sundance, Firefly and Heart Throb, and easy enough because they're kind of come in, they're pink and kind of light blue, light lilac, those lovely pastel colours, and I'm going to try and see how they actually blend and mix and what they turn out looking like. Okay, so we'll go again. Yeah, right. And I have my little dish, so some water, and what I'm going to do is, I don't want to, obviously the ponies themselves, their little bodies have a kind of a tiny amount of, they will have shade and shadow, but I never add black because I think it just muddies, even a grey shadow. I don't want that at all. So what I'm going to do is, I know Sundance, she is a white pony. So I'm going to make her a white pony, but I'm going to do a tiny little bit of her shadow is going to be slightly gold coloured, or a tiny little bit of yellow. And yeah, so she's going to be, I want him to have that warm look. And I'll just layer it down on her, a base colour. Now that's a little bit too yellow. She's a little bit too yellow now for my liking. Right away I can see that, but we'll change it. And clean brush. So I have brought along my water pots as well. 2 of them actually. Okay, we'll do clean white. So she's coming out a little bit flesh toned first, which no, that is not a Sundance. Or certainly not the Sundance I was going to say once knew and loved. Of course, still know and indeed still loved. So we'll do a tiny little bit of yellow, tiny. Now there's, again, it's a little bit difficult to kind of assess. Nah. We'll do more rose. We'll bring in a slight little bit of rose. So it's a little bit like mixing up skin colours. Which can be a little bit tricky too, I'll admit, because everyone's skin tone, being what we are, can be very different. But yeah, I'm happy with the coverage of these paints, I will say. My Himi gouache, I have reached a conclusion, and I don't know who else, if anybody else has reached the same conclusion, but I think they're more kind of like students in animation, the likes of Studio Ghibli, sort of those lovely painted kind of backgrounds, which that is most old Disney films too have gouache in the backgrounds. I've reached a conclusion that students studying that type of those type of animation, those type of backgrounds, they use Himi gouache for that reason. And so it's only like maybe a 6-week semester. And then at the very end of it, then, you know, the 6 weeks, they move on to something else. I've reached that conclusion because no matter what I did with my Himi gouache, they molded over anyway. So they definitely did not. Now, I had them 5 years, but I had to keep continuously replacing some little cups and using different gouache too. I don't know. I've reached that conclusion myself. I don't know if that is the right conclusion, but I feel like it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, certainly enlighten me in the comments how you got on with your Himi gouache if you have used it. So I did come to the conclusion that I'm not gonna. I want to have, you know, art supplies that whenever I open the box to use them, I am not horrified by the mold growth on them, regardless of what I did. So I said to myself, I budget for my art supplies, and I'm not the sort of channel that is constantly doing hauls all the time and trying out new projects or produce. There are channels out there like that. I'm not one of them. I budget yearly, and if I do have some money, not necessarily a lot, but I will buy something that I know I'm sure I will replace and use and love. So I did that, and I choose Pebeo Gouache. Now I got a little refill of something that I have been looking for too, but that will be in another video. But I made the decision to replace my Himi gouache with Pebeo. So it's a student grade gouache too. So, and I'm happy with them. They are quite nice. I had been using the white for a long time. So now I'm trying the whole lot of their range, and it's nice. Yeah, I'm finding these little paints here, because they are water soluble, but I'm using very liminal amount of water in my little dish. So they're quite thick and creamy, and they're layering down really well. I do like that. I like how they are given that creamy. I often see people with Holbein and I think it's Sennelier or Meaden acrylics, and now acrylic gouache, obviously, but it always looks so nice and creamy. So we are achieving that with these, and I think they are. I did say that after my first video in part 1 that I did I did anyway think these were a lovely little set for student, student grade. But I'm quite sure of that now. I don't have any really negative things to say about them. Now, she is very pink, but it is kind of cute actually. I do like how how pink she is. Okay, so yeah. So it's hard to see. So she is a light little pony here, but I might let her dry before I try her mane or another layer. And simply because it is a little bit tough to see her, I might move on to Firefly. So Firefly 2 she is a kind of a darker rosy pink. I'm pretty sure. I'm actually working off my memory. I'm not even looking at a reference. So if they are the wrong shades, well, there's no reference here. And yeah, so there might be a little bit of discrepancy in the colors, but that's okay. Now, so for her, I'll just show you what I'm doing with my little dish. So trying to achieve in the 80s in the show and the books, they had lovely pastel colors or paisley kind of tones built up. And I'm trying to achieve that. I remember Firefly, from what I remember, she was pink with a kind of a sort of a blue lilac mane and tail. Now I will do the bows separately because of course I can't think off the top of my head what the bows would have been. But I'm just trying to mix up a nice shade for her body. So dragging in a tiny little bit of purple, and it's more or less this lovely magenta colour and a lot of white. So as you can see, when mixed well with water, not too much water, there's a little drop in, you can see a little bit of, because they are water soluble, and yes, they can behave like watercolors. I have done many washes with them. So I'm going to see, am I happy with that? Yeah, I like that shade. And it is very, the consistency is, it's a little bit custardy, which is nice. I do like that. That's kind of what you want to achieve with gouache at times. So, and putting the tiny little dab of purple. So it's a lovely kind of dark purple here. Putting that in was very good because you can kind of see it's not it's a different shade of pink from what I want to achieve with Sundance's hair is probably going to be a different, this kind of shade of pink, but no purple in it. So again, it's a lot of mixing and matching with colors and experimentation. And Firefly does have wings, of course, so I have to remember those. Now I might choose a different color for around her, go around her mane, and a different brush. So this is quite watery, as you can see, or well, at least got a higher amount, concentrate of water in it. But that's okay, we can go over it again. Like I say, fat over lean is the rule of thumb. So put down a light kind of watery wash as I am doing now, and then go over it to build up, sort of a little bit like watercolor. If anybody is familiar with watercolor, that would be the same sort of, often the same rules can apply. And certainly with gouache, I think the same rules apply. So we'll do her little, she's got a long wingtip. And then maybe even off camera, I might just fill in the little shadows. So I might make shorts of that, of course. But yeah, very cute. Her wingtip. And these are really nice paints. So for a for a student brand, Obviously, where I am, I think they were about maybe €18. So you're getting 12 colours and they are sizable. So some gouache paints, they only come in 15 millilitres and 5 millilitres. So these ones were the 20 milliliters. So already they are the biggest tubes of gouache I own. I do own some Winsor Newton, sort of maybe the once-offs, like the a nice blue or something, or the Royal Talons I do own actually, a few of them. So and they come in the jars, interestingly enough. But this is kind of certainly the biggest tube of gouache I have ever owned, and they're really nice. So I feel like Pebeo kind of feel like with an extra 20 milliliters, I feel like they're spoiling us. And that's really nice. So even for, a studenty brand, it's very good, I feel. So I'm just doing her outline in the smaller brush here. So we do her little hooves. The good thing is, another reason why I would test and try My Little Pony fan art is the good thing about their bodies is you can kind of get away with no real detail. Like there's no discernible end to her hooves. And the wings even, like apart from a little bit of shadow or form for presumably feathers, there's no real form to worry about, because I often worry, I don't draw realistic subjects. And horses are very difficult to draw. So, and no, I don't draw horses. The only horses I draw are My Little Pony ones. So, but that's why, because they're so easy to draw. They've got little pastely, chubby little bodies. So that's what I like about them. And of course the colors are beautiful. Now I'm going to just try and, because I'm losing some of my lovely tone that I've mixed up. That's another problem I often see, that sometimes you're running out of that color. So I'm just trying to hurriedly mix up another little amount of it, and hopefully it's the right color. Hopefully it matches in with her little body here. Now I will say it looks a little bit patchy when it's kind of drying. So I'm just hoping that that's a different shade. Yeah, so she dries, she seems to be, it's tiny little, if you can see it, I don't know if you can, and certainly I've brought in a different shade now into the mix, but tiny little bit patchy, but that's no problem. We can fix it. So the tummy is quite round, so I'm trying to, there, yeah. But I do think as well, I'm gonna say, Pebeo, I do like you as a brand, and I'm realizing now as I have bought these, it was a good choice. I would recommend them. So that is really what I wanted to say, and playing around with them here, I'm realizing lovely brand, and nice budgetary art brand, and nice budgetary paints. So it is nice to see that. I have only ever tried their white. So the big tube of white, I demonstrated that yesterday actually in my previous, or part one of this. Now, so we're going into the corner a little bit. But they're white already. I do use their white. I have a big tube of white, because if you're working with gouache, or indeed other paints, white is probably the most you will use of any of the colors. So I have the big tube of the white, the 220 milliliters, and thank goodness for it. Okay, so I'm going over her. So when it dries, bearing in mind it will dry lighter, and if there is a thin layer, that's what's causing that patchiness. Or can cause the patchiness. So I'm going over it now, filling in those little kind of what I can see are the patchy layers. I'm filling them in with a thicker consistency of that color, so less water. So obviously the less water, the thicker the consistency. Okay, so she is mostly blocked in. Okay, so I'm happy with that, but I'm going to bring in a little bit of shadow. So I'm going to mix up another little kind of darker, tiny darker tones using the same magenta. I'll show you again the little dish. So here we go. So trying to achieve more of this purple. So more purple and more magenta. So hopefully now that's going to create a nice shadow, actually. That's the white for that. So these pans and dishes get quite messy. Okay. We'll try it there now and see what it looks like. But I can say, purpose of this video was to test these Pebeo gouache. And I'm really happy with them. I'm really happy with the consistency. And I'm really happy with, bearing in mind these are probably going to dry a little bit lighter. But that's okay. That's what you learn going in with gouache. And if anybody was starting out or they were looking to replace their Himi gouache, which I would recommend too if you're just getting in and you want to see, do you like gouache? I would recommend those too. But if you're done with your Himis, to break up with the Himis, and you're still looking for budgetary or student grade art supplies or gouache paint, I would recommend Pebeo. I'm finding them very pleasant to work with, and I said this when I started this year that I want to get back into traditional painting like this, and one of my favorite mediums apart from watercolor is gouache. And it made me a little bit sad to open up my Himi gouache, and yes, I know 5 years, but to see a lot of the jelly cups, I didn't replace them. I used them, most of them, and some just grew mold anyway. But it did make me quite yeah, quite reminiscent and quite a little bit downbeat looking at them. So I'm going to try and see, can I blend in more? Certainly her belly area is a little bit more blending needed. And it made me quite sad, so I thought this year I have enough in the art budget kitty, which I always budget for, to replace the Himi gouache, but I didn't want to replace it with Himi gouache. So that was where I started to do research, and I don't think I see many people talking or using Pebeo. And I don't know why that is. I don't see a lot of kind of talk online or anything about Pebeo gouache. So I am hopefully going to change that with this video. Okay, so and her mane and tail. So it's going to be, I might do a part 3, I'm not that sure. But so far, these are kind of just a little fun kind of demonstration, or fun to me anyway, and hopefully fun to you watching. If you're interested in kind of getting some other kinds of gouache after Himi and you're not sure, and student budgetary things kept in mind, yeah, Himi gouache, absolutely. I think they are really nice. We'll do a little kind of her little, oh, that's a bit too dark. Okay, and a little bit too watery. But I will say as well, they've nice texture can be achieved with these. And nice, they have good coverage. Like that was only a tiny little drop of it, and yeah, already I've managed to do one little pony. She's not quite finished yet, obviously, and I might just finish off finish her off camera. Actually, yeah, that's my worst nightmare here, is when you've built up lovely shade and shadow and under another layer it disappears. Yeah, so I might actually do in her details, and certainly her mane has a lot of details. I might do that not necessarily in any video, but so far, so poor Sundance didn't get much, but I thought maybe Firefly actually might be best to try her body with a colour, because creamy white on creamy white, it's always difficult to see, and certainly where I sit, it's by a window and it is very, very bright. But that has been my playtime with Pebeo Studio Gouache, and I've really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed doing it, and it is lovely to just get back to traditional painting. So I'll continue on with these, and I'll be on Instagram with them, and probably shorts, or probably already have done it long and ever ago. But anyway, I would absolutely recommend Pebeo Gouache as a student brand of gouache to use. That was really fun to do. Really nice little exercise, and I'm going to continue with these. And really happy that I invested a little bit in them. So, if you have been following me from the very, very start and you're still here, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. If you're just new and you've just joined in or stumbled upon me, hello and welcome, and thank you very much for still staying until the end if you have. Why not consider liking and subscribing? I make these kind of videos all of the time. There's always something new out from me. And I do other kinds of art, other materials, other 3D crafts. Big mix. But if you like what you see, why not consider liking and subscribing? And if you have tried Pebeo, if you have any thoughts, any comments, why not put them down there? I will be, of course, reading them. But however, that has been my little playtime with Pebeo Gouache. Bye bye.